Good evening, guys. I hope you guys are doing well tonight. We are back with another commentary for Apocalypse for PlayStation 1. We are going to talk shop before this commentary begins. It's going to talk about what the future is going to look like moving forward, what I'm doing, what's going on, games that I'm planning on working on, and games that are temporarily canceled. So let's go ahead and get into it. I am going to be taking some time off. It turns out I wound up going to the doctor's office the other day. My eye was killing me. Had no idea why. She went ahead and referred me out to my optometrist, and it turns out that my retina is starting to develop a tear. So she wants me to slow down on the Longplays a fair bit. I'm going to have some surgery to have it patched up and stuff, and it's going to take some time to heal. Now, I had some plans to do Dino Crisis 2, as well as Alone in the Dark: The New Nightmare. I found that I was hitting the wall with all three games. I didn't really care for Dino Crisis 2. It's a very action-heavy game instead of a survival horror style game that I had known Dino Crisis 1 for. I didn't really care for it. I tried playing it for about 3 hours and stuff. Apparently I loved it when I was younger, not so much now that I'm older. It's fun to play to a certain extent. Not so much fun to make a long play out of it. Definitely has like this arcade feel that I didn't really care for. I may wind up doing it in the future just to go ahead and say that it's done. Because at some point I do want to do the first Dino Crisis, but as for now, I don't see myself doing it until I get the willpower up to do it. With Dino Crisis 1, I do enjoy the game, but it's going to be put on the back burner as well. And the reason why is because I have to learn how to play it. I already know how to do all the mechanics and stuff. The main issue that I'm running into is the majority of the game is gray. Like really gray. So I find that with my character wearing a gray suit and the environment being gray, I find that I can't really navigate. I tried playing it for about 4 hours, and the entire time I was literally just running in circles because all the environments look the same. So I have to learn how to play that. The one that I wanted to make a long play of the most, Alone in the Dark: The New Nightmare, it has some really cool mechanics, but I find that they get in the way a fair bit.
Welcome to paradise.
So one of the base mechanics is using your flashlight as Carnby to look around and to shine your flashlight all over the room, and what happens is the flashlight will cause items you're able to pick up to blink. The problem is most of the rooms in Alone in the Dark are solid black. You do have the option of turning the light on and stuff, but the problem is since it's solid black, I can't really tell which room I'm in a lot of the time. So what winds up happening is I go from room to room to room, and then I wind up backtracking to other rooms and stuff because I just can't really see that well with it. So the main issue is all the rooms kind of look the same. So I'm going to have to learn to navigate it, and if I do manage to conquer it, it's most likely going to be in the style of a speedrun. So I'm going to be moving through the game about as fast as I can and stuff, because I got to strike while the memory's getting good. So we're moving into, at the time of recording, I'm in mid-September, and I have enough content built up throughout all of September's work to start moving into the end of November and the start of December. So those 3 games are going to be put on the back burner. And for now, I think this particular game in general is going to be the last one that I long play for a while, because they're going to be rushing me into surgery, and I'm going to be having to take a break afterwards so I can heal up. So that's pretty much what everything's looking like, and I'm still waiting on testing for my mom to come back. I have a lot going on, and I gotta take care of me and my family first. So, in regards to the long plays in general, I've been getting a lot of questions about them, Like, how long is this particular series going to keep going on? Because eventually I had made the comment in one of the servers that the long plays were meant to be like a limited series. Well, to be honest with you, I think the main issue that I ran into is that the long plays were only supposed to be, I think it was like at the time I had 5 videos planned. And the thing is it's gone way beyond 5 videos. Like at the time of recording this, I have 19 videos done. Plus a kids playlist for parents that want to watch or want to like take a break and stuff and have their kids watch something that's like more family friendly and stuff without having to worry about like my vulgar mouth and stuff going and ruining the experience. So I have a total of, let's see, 19 total. And then I've got 7 of each type of video. So I've got 7 normal long plays without commentary, and I got 7 long plays with commentary. This is something that I would actually like to do long term. I thought about it, and the more I think about it, the more I realize, oh hey, you know, I actually really enjoy this. So it's something that I would like to continue to do, but I'm only going to base that continuity off of what the future looks like. So I will be taking time off for myself to have my eye worked on, and then afterwards I had a bunch of surgery on my feet because the bones were screwed up, so I'm going to have to chase an aggressive rehab program to learn how to use my feet again. So I'm going to be really busy for like a really long time. I know that I will be coming back at some point to do more long plays. I enjoy them, there's really no reason to not do them, but before I can go and do more long plays, I have to get myself squared away. I gotta get back in shape. I've been doing surgery for so long trying to fix my legs that I haven't really done any sort of physical fitness test with my doctor in, I think it's coming up on 10 months. Like, I haven't done a physical fitness test in a while, and I know that I'm getting out of shape because I haven't worked out in a really long time. So I need to go and build myself back up. I'm going to be chasing rehab more or less aggressively. It's not going to be a very short thing for me. It's something I'm going to have to do almost every day. And I'm going to be doing it for multiple hours every day. So that's not really going to leave any time for me to work on long plays whatsoever. But I kind of need to do this if I'm going to be able to walk correctly. So I'm going to be going and doing my rehabilitation. My mom's already started like her rehabilitation, and I want to give her a hand with that. So I'm going to be really, really busy as an end result for a really long time. We're going to be moving on to asking questions. Well, not so much asking questions, but questions people have asked me. I got a piece of mail the other day asking me what exactly is wrong with my vision, since I'm, labeling my series of Blind Gamer Long Plays. It's a 3-part issue. The front of my corneas are scarred. I had a freak occurrence, and it wound up scarring my eyes a fair bit. My left definitely got it worse than my right. My right is pretty scarred, and then the additional issue that it has is my retinas are damaged on top of it. So I can't see out of my left at all, and then I have very minimal vision in my right. So the third issue is I wound up taking a blow to the head, same incident, and it wound up damaging my visual cortex. Now, if you don't know what your visual cortex is, it's just basically the back of your brain that processes all of your visual information. So a lot of the disability is refractive error, and there's a good chunk of it that is also a processing disorder. So what the surgery is going to do is I'm looking into having a cornea transplant to see if it'll fix my vision. And then I have to have additional eye surgery to close the tear that was forming, because if I don't, it'll cause, fluid will seep behind it, it'll cause my retina to separate from the back of my eyeball, destroying what's left of my vision. So I'm trying to chase this aggressively. but I'm going to have to wait a couple more weeks to actually go and have surgery done. And so in that time, I'm going to be working on YouTube as normal. But that's what ails my vision. That's what's made me short-sighted and stuff. The visual processing issue that my brain has is not something that can be fixed. I tried going and getting visual therapy for it, and it just didn't really do anything for me. I chased it aggressively for a couple of years, and there was no improvement. With my retinas, I have to watch over them very carefully. My left one, not so much, but my right one definitely, because my right one is the only one that has like any sort of vision in it. So I have to be careful, and when problems with it pop up, I have to handle them fast because I gotta save basically what's left. So that's basically, you know, how blind I am. A lot of people, I think, when I do these videos, a lot of them assume that I'm totally blind. And I have to explain to them that I'm just short-sighted, like really short-sighted. And so not every blind person is totally blind. I find that being blind is largely a spectrum thing. There are some that have visual processing issues. There are some that have really bad scarring and refractive errors. There are some that were actually born blind. There are actually some that have ocular nerve issues. I mean, there's like being blind is literally an entire goddamn spectrum in its own right. So with mine, it's mainly visual processing followed by refraction issues, and I'm working on the refraction issues, but I don't think it's going to make it any better personally, but it's definitely supposed to keep it from getting worse. So for those that have asked about, oh, hey, you know, how blind are you? Well, now you know. So I have been getting like a lot of mail kind of off and on. And the thing is a lot of them are asking for newer games. You know, like, why am I not streaming, like, or not streaming, why am I not recording, like, Xbox One games or PS5 games? And it's something that I've actually thought about for a hot minute now. I'm in the process of finding a proper capture card to actually go and hook my consoles up essentially to my computer, so I actually have a chance to go and do some recordings. I don't really want to do too many new games. I feel like the YouTube is oversaturated with a lot of the new games. I like a lot of the older games as well. I like the older games more than I like a lot of the newer games and stuff. You know, like, I enjoy playing these classic titles. It's just something that I've always enjoyed, and I'd have to say the last 3 years, I haven't really been playing a lot of new games. I just don't really find them appealing. So for the channel, for me it was like, okay, well, I want to do a bunch of retro games. And so I had tinkered with it, essentially, and I figured I could do retro games off of my Macintosh. And then just upload it straight to YouTube, which is really nice. I didn't need any additional equipment. I could literally just go, okay, you know, this is what we're doing, this is how we're getting there. You know, like, it's basically an all-in-one solution. On just one single piece of hardware, I can play the game, record the game, render the game, and then get it ready for upload. With adding consoles and stuff, it's going to be like a capture card, a bunch of extra cabling, and then possibly an additional monitor. That way I have one monitor that shows me how the capture is going, and then another monitor to actually play it, you know, to play the game on and stuff, so there's no delay. I know that they have capture cards where you can literally sit there and be like, okay, well, I can not only capture the game on the PC, I also have a window that I can sit there and play my game on as well, but there's like a half-second delay, and I'm not really a huge fan of that. People keep insisting to me that there's nothing to worry about with it, but I don't know, I don't like having a delay. It's already weird having a delay on a classic game using a Bluetooth controller, and I don't want to have additional delay on top of it. So, I have thought about it. Modern games are not anywhere in the future currently. It's going to be a lot of classic games, and I'm okay with that. I'm going to be having to cut back anyways, especially after surgery. So they want me to, after the procedure's done, they want me to keep my eye covered so it can just rest a while. So I'm going to be doing a lot of relaxing and a lot of sleeping. So, but we're going to go ahead and move on to the commentary for Apocalypse. I didn't really know much about this game, in all honesty. I had gotten it from a subscriber who had mailed it to me. And she had said, you know, hey, I think you'll really like this. You seem like you're into these kind of games. And so she had mailed me her old copy of Apocalypse. Apparently it's an older Bruce Willis game from the late 90s, early 2000s. Feel free to correct me if I'm wrong. I don't really know much about it. This game's actually really fun. I do like it. It's not a terribly long game, but, you know, I feel like it's not too long, it's not too short. The big thing that really kind of put it apart for me, there's two things I noticed. One, the frame rate on this game is really horrible, and two, it actually makes use of both thumbsticks. Both thumbsticks are kind of used in a odd fashion. They have really huge dead zones and stuff. But it's actually interesting to see a PlayStation 1 game utilize both thumbsticks in a cohesive manner, because, like, back then, thumbsticks weren't really used in a digital fashion per se. You know, where you could just, whatever direction you had tilted the thumbstick in was the direction you would walk. They would still use tank controls a lot of the time, so using tank controls with thumbsticks was just really, really unusual, and it was just easier to use the D-pad. So I had gotten this game in, and I went ahead, popped it in, got it imported to the emulator and stuff, and I was actually shocked at how much fun I was having with this game. Now, this game does have issues, like a lot of them. It was kind of, this game is in this weird point in time where people were still learning how to do 3D development properly. So I see, like, a lot of the levels in this game, it's really weird because it wants to be a twin-stick shooter, but it also wants to be like a heavy platformer, which is really, really odd because I like the shooting, but I don't think the game was tailored enough for the DualShock style controller. So it feels kind of weird because when I go and aim, there's not this progressive kind of tilt or direction pointing with it. Basically, when I would go and aim, it would be like, okay, up or left or right or somewhere in between. Like, it would act more like a digital pad, which was really, really strange. So there's really this, there's no sense of progression when it comes to actually rotating the stick, you know, so it kind of feels like they just assigned a D-pad configuration to it and then just said to hell with it. But no, it's definitely usable. There were points in time where I had to use the D-pad because the, for lack of a better term, the platforming segments are very unforgiving towards thumbsticks, like with the way that the thumbsticks work and stuff. It's definitely, you can tell that this game is definitely built for directional pad, but the thumbsticks were kind of like the sprinkles on top, you know, the frosting, if you will. And so it's just kind of strange because I like the idea of using thumbsticks to move my character around, but I find that with the right analog stick aiming is very inaccurate, as you can see right here. You know, there's really no sort of progression when it comes to slowly rotating the stick around to aim at somebody. So I found that it was making the game kind of harder. Like, they try to have a little bit of aim assist with this game as well, but I find that the aim assist isn't really aggressive enough. Like, I find that also sometimes I'll go and be shooting an enemy head on and they won't be taking damage, like the shots won't be connecting correctly. It's kind of a damn shame because I actually really enjoyed playing this title. It's actually a hell of a lot of fun. Like, even with its issues, it's still fun. You know, and I like the witty one-liners and stuff. I like how they got Bruce Willis to do his voiceover as well. That was actually really, really nice. The game itself is actually really, really fun. it's easy to pick up and play. It's just the way that the thumbsticks are handled is really rough at times, and the way that it's kind of strange because games back then, you know, like they didn't really have any sort of form of camera control, and if you did have camera control, it was mainly just rotating the camera left or right with the shoulder buttons a lot of the time. So with this game, they try to put the camera on rails, which for the most part, the camera does okay. It's not the worst camera I'd ever seen. The biggest issue with the camera is not generally when I'm shooting things, it's not generally in combat area. It actually, it's at its worst during platforming. So this game wasn't quite satisfied being just a simple twin-stick shooter and stuff. It tried to be a platformer on top of it. And so it's kind of weird because with the way that the camera swings around and stuff, since the camera itself is on rails, it has a tendency to screw with the platforming a fair bit. And so I didn't really... Oh man, I didn't really care for it. I mean, the game, it's weird because I'm having fun with the game. But with the way that the platforming is done, with how it handles like the camera and stuff, I found that I would die, like, a lot. And it wouldn't be like a lack of reaction time or anything like that. What would happen is I would literally go and do one of the side-scrolling segments, because they do have a few of them in here, where a character just goes from left to right. And I found that the camera would suddenly shift. And as an end result, I wouldn't really have time to go adjust and then continue playing. So what would happen is the camera would shift and I would miss the platform that I was going on. Or sometimes what would happen is the camera would be positioned in such an oddball location that I wouldn't be able to tell what it is that I'm supposed to be jumping on. So I kind of understand that this game is like a product of its time, you know, like people are still learning how to do this. And I do believe that Apocalypse is one of the funner games that I had played on PS1. You know, it's actually really, really nice. It's just really strange because like a lot of the time I would sit here and be shooting things. Sometimes the shots would connect, sometimes they wouldn't, sometimes the camera would freak out. It's very much so kind of a mixed bag. Like, even though I do enjoy playing the game, and even though I went back and played it a few times because it's just really, really fun, these issues kind of persist a fair bit. You know, it kind of makes shooting hard sometimes. It makes platforming a really huge pain in my ass at other times, you know. It's really, really weird. I think that if they would have been more thoughtful with the camera, it wouldn't really be as bad. I found that during filming that the game was rather glitchy. I mean, it was glitchy when I was doing the first runs of it and stuff, but the glitches would kind of make filming really difficult sometimes because I would shoot enemies, it wouldn't register, and then other times I would go to do platforming, and I would go straight through the wall, or sometimes fall through the map. I mean, it was just really, really weird. So it took me a couple of times to actually go and get this where it needs to be. I only had to do 2 runs to actually get the to get everything down pat where it was at and stuff. I really had a good time with the game. It's not too often that somebody can actually go and suggest a game to me, mail me something over, and then I turn around and say, oh, this is really fun. Most of the time I'm like, I didn't really care for this, you know. But with Apocalypse, it was really, really fun. I find that a lot of the cutscenes for the time are actually really, really clean. You know, it's not the best CG that I've ever seen on a PlayStation game, but it's still really, really nice. They did a good job with it. The one thing that really kind of killed it for me is the game is very chaotic, and that's inherently not a bad thing per se. The problem is my vision struggles to keep up with all the crap that's going on screen, and then we have the added issue of this game is not functioning anywhere near 30 frames. and so some areas appear to be moving in slow motion. I thought it was the emulator I was running at first. I went back, threw it in a True Blue PlayStation, and no, that's just the game. You know, it's just how it runs and stuff. And it was kind of weird because it made later areas really difficult because everything went from being pretty responsive to really sluggish, and it would get me killed a lot of the times. And you know, especially with segments where the floor is falling out from under you, a lot of the time the frame rate would just straight up tank. And as an end result, you know, since the frames aren't there, it makes it incredibly difficult to have any sort of response time to jump or, you know, get the hell out of the way, essentially. So it was really just kind of one of those things, I think, you know, and understand that the PlayStation 1 had really limited hardware, but I think that it should at least... The standard I have for PS1 games is I want to at least see them above 20 frames. I understand that 30 frames back then was pushing it. There wasn't really a lot of games that could do 30 frames consistently. But I at least want to try to keep it above 20. So it was one of those things where I would fight a boss and I would die simply because the boss would jump in the air and naturally I would have to get out of the way. Well, everything's moving at kind of like a slideshow because of all the action on the screen, so I would find myself dying from it a lot. You know, and it was one of the few instances where I literally couldn't blame it on my vision. I had a friend of mine pop into the room while I was sitting here and getting ready to start filming, and she was going and looking at the screen, and she's like, "How the hell do you play this?" I'm like, very, very carefully. You know, the game definitely has frame rate issues and stuff, and like towards the end of the game it actually starts to devolve into a slideshow, if you would. And it was just really, really strange because like I'd played a lot of PS1 games, and yeah, okay, they didn't always have like the best frame rate and stuff. Some of them actually had quite bad frame rates, but the thing that made it kind of weird is with this game, it has so much going on screen that it just struggles to maintain anything near 20 at times. When I had started doing my first runs of a lot of these bosses, I would literally struggle with it because they're trying to go for such a strong presentation with lots of stuff going on screen that it causes the frame rate to tank. And I'm one of those people where it's like, okay, I don't really care how good a game looks. I want it to be functional. And with Apocalypse, it was kind of like this weird, oddball sort of... It wants to have gameplay that requires good response time, but it also wants to look really, really good as well while doing it. And so it's just really, really strange because it's like it set out to do both and almost didn't do both successfully because since there was so much going on screen, the frame rate isn't there. And since the frame rate isn't there, really, the action struggles a lot of the time because the response time isn't there. So, you know, I think I would have just really chosen one or the other. I would have either pared back the visuals or the action a little bit, although I'm not really sure how much they could pare back the visuals a fair bit because of the aggressive amount of dithering and stuff that they already use on this game. You know, it would have been better to like see one or the other and stuff. I mean, I feel that Apocalypse is one of the better games on PS1. Like, I enjoyed it right off the bat, but a lot of these issues, I was just kind of looking at it and going, what were they thinking, really? But I think Bruce Willis, one of the highlights of this game is Bruce Willis does an amazing job with his role. I like the witty one-liners and stuff, and I think they did a good job representing him in game. I mean, yeah, it's a pixelated mess, but how many PlayStation 1 games, aside from games that were like side-scrollers and stuff, weren't pixelated messes? You know, I think they did good with a lot of what they set out to do with this game, and at the end of the day, the game is very enjoyable, you know. Went ahead and played it on easy. You know, like I knew that I was going to be struggling with this game a fair bit. I was sitting back, and when I had gotten the game, I was kind of like, I was looking at it and I said, oh man, this looks like a game that I'm really going to struggle with. And so I went ahead and I looked up a video on YouTube and threw it up on the big screen and stuff, got super close, and I was sitting there analyzing it, and I said, oh, I'm going to have my work cut out for me. So this is definitely a very chaotic game. But I was kind of surprised at how fast I was able to adapt to it and stuff. You know, I mean, it's a lot to take in, I think. Like, for normal people, I'm sure they're going to look at this and they're going to be like, oh, this isn't so bad. You know, this is going to be like a classic romp, if you would. But with me, it's like trying to keep an eye on multiple enemies, followed by paying attention to where you're going, followed by trying to get pickups and stuff. It's a difficult thing. So I had to, when I was going and doing my initial runs, I had to literally get up as close as I could on top of it to be able to see what the hell was going on. So it was really just kind of a hell of a thing and stuff, and I definitely had to keep chipping away at it. And sometimes it's frustrating, I think. You know, like, I was trying to go and sit there and play the hell out of it, and sometimes it's really frustrating because, like, you'll miss a power-up because you can't really see it, or sometimes there's an enemy that's just totally ruining your health bar and you can't always see it. And then there are other points in the game, so this was filmed on a 55-inch Sony TV. And so I like to keep the traditional aspect ratio. I know a lot of people that do classic games these days, they like to use upscalers and everything else to try to make it look widescreen, as well as give it better visuals and stuff. But I didn't really want it, per se. Like, I like to do the traditional aspect ratio that these games have. They look really weird when they're upscaled and stretched out and stuff, you know, so I'm already filming it on as big a box as I can, essentially. But there are some segments of the game where, even though I'm filming it on a huge TV, the character is just so small. Like, I have the world's smallest Bruce Willis on my screen, and it is so strange. So what would end up happening is segments like right here, he's just so damn small that I can't really see what the hell I'm doing. Like, even when I'm up on the TV, you know, like right up on it practically, I can't really see it. And I wish that the developer would have been a little bit more thoughtful, because I can only imagine. So I never played this game back in the day per se, but back in the day most people had 20-inch televisions. I can only imagine, oh jeez, I can only imagine how hard people were suffering back then with a character that small on a TV that is smaller than what I'm currently using. So there were some segments of this game, I'm literally sitting there and I'm close to the TV, you know, I'm sitting there and I'm staring at it, I'm like, okay, how do I do this? And a lot of it was literally just me having to play the game slow, because I couldn't keep a beat on it. And then there are other scenes where the character's like nice and big and stuff, and it was just really, really strange. Some decisions they made with this game were really brilliant and stuff and very well thought out, and then other decisions they made really not so much. I know with a lot of the bosses, they're actually really, really easy. Even when you're playing it on normal, they're still relatively easy and stuff. And the only boss that I really kind of struggled with, I think, was the final one. And that's because the frame rate tanks so hard that I can't keep up with it. Like, my reaction time goes out the window and stuff. You know, it's non-existent at that point. But no, like I said, some decisions are really brilliant and stuff. you know, with how certain scenes play out and then other decisions are really, really bad. Like, a lot of the side-scrolling platform sections like you see right here, they kind of, I don't know, it doesn't really feel like they're done super well. I can tell that they tried to address the issues of the 4:3 aspect ratio by having the, as your character is moving left or right, they have the camera in the back next to the character, so they try to give you a little bit of a track to see down, which is very nice and very considerate. But it doesn't always work so well. A lot of the platforming segments leave a lot to be desired. So I'll go ahead and hit a platform like square, just square in the center of it, and sometimes I'll still go through the platform regardless and die. It's really just kind of strange, you know, it's kind of, this game is definitely a mixed bag, like as much fun as I had with it. It's still kind of a mixed bag, per se. Some of the things that the game wants you to do are like a little huge pain in the ass, like there's this segment that we're going to be running up on, where we have to push a button and then keep all the enemies away from the button as the door opens. If the enemies touch the button, the door closes, you gotta start again. So they pan the camera out all the way to the back and stuff, and it's really odd because it makes everything super small. And so as an end result, the zombies that they have in the area, they're super easy to see because they're like this really bright kind of neon green. Then they have some enemies that are supposed to be what I'm assuming are human beings in suits. And what winds up happening is they're so small that I can't really see them against the background. So I kind of struggled against this area for like a really long time, and I'm just kind of sitting here going, Jesus Christ, am I going to be able to do this? Because I would go kill the enemies, and then the ones that I wouldn't be able to see would just walk up, tap the button, close the door again, and I would have to rinse, dry, and repeat. So it was really kind of odd in that regard. And then we have like another level, speaking of platforming gone wrong. What they did was it's a building that you have to scale the outside of. And it's not so bad if it wasn't for the fact that they have geometry poking out of the walls that your character gets stuck on. So they expect you to walk on this like super thin ledge essentially while fighting off tons of enemies. Everything else, but the problem is there's gaps that you have to jump, and as an end result what winds up happening is you'll go to jump and you'll get stuck on the geometry, and then you'll fall through the gap in the building and die most of the time. And it just didn't really, like, it felt like they wanted to do big things with this game, but it just didn't really feel like that they understood how to do it. You know, like a lot of things just kind of felt like common sense errors. You know, it's like if I was going and working on a game and stuff, I would try to make the outside of the building as smooth as possible, because when I expect a player to go into like a platforming environment and stuff, I wouldn't want them to literally get stuck on the background. It just kind of makes for bad gameplay, I think.
Don't shoot! I'm a wife again!
But no, it was a humbling experience, I think, you know, because on one end it was nice to see the developer try to embrace new technology like analog thumbsticks and stuff, and it was interesting to see how those thumbsticks were used, but at the same time it's truly a mixed bag because the game wants to be a platformer, it wants to be a shooter, you know, like it wants to be all these things, and the problem is it tries to do so much, but it doesn't really particularly do any of them well, you know. It's like, it's a twin-stick shooter, it's an arcade shooter, it's a platformer. You know, like it really feels kind of weird when they try to mash all this stuff together, and while the game is fun, I'm not really blind to its various issues. So my entire time playing it, I had 2 crashes, both of them on the save screen, strangely enough. I didn't plan on doing any sort of saving, though it is unstable as the game can be at times. I didn't really want to lose progress while going and doing the long play. I didn't think that I was going to be able to get away with it. Like Resident Evil, when I was going and doing the long plays for that particular trilogy, the game was already super stable. So I felt like, okay, I can do this in a single sitting. But with this game, with it being as unstable as it is, and with its tendency to crash, especially when things really get going on screen, you know, I kind of felt like I had to save a fair bit. Because yes, I'm doing a long play, but at the same time, if it crashes or anything, I want to be able to sit there and not lose my progress. Like, I don't want to constantly sit there and have to restart the game over and over again because the game has, like, the occasional issue here and there. With some games, you have to do it, you know. I would love to do pretty much every title no save, you know, that I go and release and stuff, but some games are made super stable and others aren't. And with Apocalypse, it's not super stable and stuff, especially with the way that the frame rate has a tendency to tank and everything else. It made a lot of the bosses a hell of a lot more difficult than they had really any right to be. So I feel that a lot of the environments are memorable. They definitely have like that 1990s sort of cyberpunk edge and stuff, and I found that a lot of the game is very tongue-in-cheek. Like, it's not afraid to make fun of itself, especially when you're in the middle of combat and all you hear is fuck their rights, kill them, you know. It definitely, like, when I play this game, the only thing I really think of in the back of my mind per se is, dear God, this is what the rest of the world must think America's like. You know, there's basically, as you play the game, there's a lot of tongue-in-cheek moments that are definitely nods to American culture, especially with like capitalism and everything else. And they tried to do the whole dystopic future thing, and it actually it's done really well, I think. I actually liked this section a fair bit. I actually thought this walkway was going on forever for a while. I thought that I would have to fight the boss while going down this walkway and stuff, and I decided to keep going, and then the checkpoint hits, and it's like, oh, I'm on this platform to fight this mini-boss, and, you know, it's just really kind of a silly thing, because in the back of my mind when I was going down the walkway, I'm sitting there thinking to myself, I'm like, how long is this damn thing? And then I was like, maybe I should just keep going. It doesn't really seem reasonable that I have to fight this aerial unit, you know, on a walkway. But, you know, we eventually got to the rooftop and stuff, and, you know, the end of the level. The game itself is rather short. I do believe that it was only like an hour 20 long, hour 20-ish. You know, the game itself only has 11 levels. It's not terribly long, but to be fair, a lot of the games on the PlayStation were actually kind of short. You could beat them in like a sitting or two, especially like the Resident Evil titles. I think the only games that really were longer than like an hour or two were the platforming games of the day, like Crash Bandicoot and Spyro the Dragon and everything else. Platformers in general that weren't 2D had a tendency to be super long and stuff. Yeah, we're like 43 minutes in and I'm already on level 6, you know, like halfway through the game and stuff. But I actually liked a lot of the environments. I like what they did with the skybox as well. Back then I didn't really see too many PlayStation games using a super animated skybox like that. I didn't really see a lot of PlayStation games use rain like this either. Like, a lot of the times when I would see rain on a PlayStation game, the raindrops would be super chunky. And, you know, I kind of got used to it after a while. I was like, this must be just how rain is. But no, this game, it actually tries to have somewhat realistic raindrops, which is actually really, really nice and stuff. And the game definitely has its quirks. The way that it handles audio is really, really odd and stuff. So there's various songs that will actually play throughout the game and stuff, especially in the urban environments, where it'll actually show whatever artist is going and doing the song on like a giant screen, and then the song itself will start playing. But it's kind of weird at times because what'll happen is I'll just be like, right, I'm not going to be sticking around for the song, and then what'll happen is I'll get a little bit a ways from the audio source, and instead of it just like fading out the further you go away from it, it would just abruptly quit, which I felt was very, very strange. And so this was the section where I had to literally use the D-pad for it because the thumbsticks just weren't doing it. And it kind of made me realize that this game most likely was built around D-pad. So the way they have the controller set up is it's kind of weird. It's a little wonky. Very Smash TV-esque. Basically what happens is you basically have the D-pad to walk around with, and you walk in like whatever direction you press, and then you have the 4 face buttons, and the face buttons, they literally point you in a specific direction to shoot. So like triangle will point you forward, and then circle is right, square is left, yada yada. And so it's kind of weird. Jumping is actually done with R1, which when paired with the thumbsticks, it's great. Face buttons, not so much. You know, like, trying to sit there and do it with the face buttons was like a real huge pain in the ass, but going and pairing it up with the thumbsticks was actually really great. It actually creates a really fluid experience when it works correctly. Problem is, it very seldom, if ever, works correctly. So it feels kind of weird at times. So I would be going and, like, running really fast sometimes, and I'd go to jump, and it wouldn't always register. So, I mean, I checked the controller, it was fine. You know, I'm assuming it's just a problem with the game. But yeah, the controls, they take a little bit to get used to and stuff, but once you actually get used to them, you're kind of just sitting here going, oh, okay, alright, you know, and it becomes a real fluid experience once you break it in and stuff. And then R2 is literally the special that you have, the smart bombs, which their function is literally to just damage the hell out of everything in an area and stuff. And there's not really a lot going on control-wise. The big problem that I had is I was used to playing other platformers where the jump button is X, so I'd be running around and I would accidentally tap X, and I wouldn't be so used to using R1, and so I would kind of goof up and I would die at that point. But once you actually get used to the controls and stuff, once you get used to using both thumbsticks, it's a surprisingly smooth experience, which is not something we really had a whole hell of a lot of back on the PlayStation. Especially with most games not using digital control with the thumbsticks and stuff. You know, it wasn't so much digital control, it was just straight up tank controls. Especially with Silent Hill, Tenchu, Nightmare Creatures 1 and 2, you know. All of them used tank controls, and Nightmare Creatures 2 is a little bit of an older game.
Ooh, that felt good.
So, but these are the neon zombies that I was talking about and stuff. They're really easy to see, like, even though the zombies themselves appear to be wearing, like, some sort of black suit, I think. But, yeah. As you can see right here, this is like the frame rate that I was talking about. You get like a little too much on the screen, and the frame rate just straight up tanks. And it's not so much of an issue towards the beginning of the game, but it's definitely a problem late game because like they try to build up to a certain presentation, which is pretty cool. Like, I'm glad that they want to build up, but the PlayStation 1 just doesn't really handle it that well.
Let's rock this party.
You know, and it shows. You know, especially when you're playing the game at a blistering 5 frames a second. You know, but the frame rate will tank, and then you'll literally sit there and have to wait for it to play catch up or defeat enough enemies to where, you know, it basically relieves the stress on things. And so this is the door that I was talking about. This fucking thing. Yeah, I was actually really thoughtless when it actually came to this segment, because the last time I was here I had 3 smart bombs saved up, and then once I figured out that there was people touching the button, I literally had to sit there and I would just smart bomb it and it would give the door enough time to open up. Well, in this instance, I don't have enough smart bombs, and so there's like enemies literally going for the button. It's not just the guys in the suits that want to do it. The zombies will actually tap it as well. And then there's a little bit of an oddity, I think, with the button as well. So basically the right thumbstick points you in the direction that, you know, you're going to be shooting and stuff, but it has this weird kind of oddity where if you're too close to the button and you're using the right thumbstick, it'll actually tap the button and close the door. So it's really kind of strange and stuff. It's very evident that the right thumbstick was not its own thing, but instead it looked like it was just buttons that were mapped to it. So it was kind of strange and stuff with how they chose to go about doing it, and I found this area to be kind of frustrating a little bit because I couldn't really see any of these guys in black. It was actually my girlfriend that literally came in, and she was like, "Are you having a hard time with that?" And I was like, "Yeah, I am." Like, I'm struggling. And so she was the one who was telling me that there was enemies in suits that were spawning on each side. And so I said, okay, I guess I'm going to have to get right up on it and try to see what the hell it's doing and stuff. And sometimes I do need help with these games. You know, they're the people that can actually, like, see normally and stuff. They have a tendency to point things out for me. So it's very kind of them, I think. But yeah, as you can see right there, I accidentally pushed the button. I was using the right thumbstick at the time, and it just decided to activate the button for whatever reason. And so that's when I kind of realized that face buttons were being, the face buttons were kind of programmed into the right thumbstick a fair bit. And so I was like, okay, I gotta stay the hell away from the button. We're gonna kill as many enemies as we can, and, you know, it's gonna be pretty much the end of it. But yeah, I was so relieved when this level was over. It was just like the worst to me. And I mean, I think if this game was made a generation later, I think that it would have benefited greatly. I mean, it's still a great game to play. I had a very good time with it. But I feel that the limitations of the technology at the time were really just kind of sinking its teeth into their asses, and I don't know, it just, like, it's kind of weird to thoroughly enjoy a game and then go and realize that it has issues, but still ending up enjoying it regardless.
Sounds like she's near the end of her set.
And I still think that these cutscenes actually look really gorgeous. They did a good job with it. They really did, especially with how light cascades and stuff, and we didn't really see a whole hell of a lot of this back then. Like, we had cutscenes and stuff, but we didn't really actually start seeing super good renders for cutscenes until the ass end of the PlayStation's lifespan, I think. Especially with, the Final Fantasy series. Probably had some of the cleanest cutscenes that I had ever seen. I still think Alone in the Dark, the New Nightmares cutscenes are really good as well, but the thing with Alone in the Dark is they all ran at really slow. Some of the animations were only running at half frames, and it was just kind of weird to see something look so gorgeous but function so badly. It's like, here is your cutscene, and then it's like, you know, why are these dogs running towards me in a very janky fashion? But all the bosses in the game are literally based off of modern interpretations of the four horsemen of the apocalypse and stuff. And so all the bosses, for the most part, are pretty fun to fight. I didn't really like the final boss. I felt that it was really excessive. But all the bosses leading up until that point are actually really, really fun. And I like the theming, and I like how they all look and feel really, really unique and stuff.
Never seen this trick before. These freaks are grafted to the latest generation of bang stick.
What's going on out there?
Candygram.
Well, praise the Lord and pass the ammunition.
Freeze, Rafer.
War sells, baby. And I'm selling to the President of the US of A.
Damn. He's heading for the factory floor.
So I didn't really care for this level too much at all. I had to practice this level a fair bit because a lot of the traps are very janky. A lot of the platforming is very janky. Like this level in general is very janky. The enemies aren't terribly threatening and stuff. Like you're more likely to die from the platforming than you are from any of these goddamn robots. So it's really interesting to see how they went about handling this and stuff. So all of these objects that are swinging here back and forth, they're all pretty consistent for the most part. You know, you just wait for it to pass and then you just jump through. And then we have this one, which normally that one yo-yos back and forth pretty damn hard before jumping through the final one here. And I would get killed by that previous one a fair bit. Then jumping down here is kind of weird as well, because a lot of those laser gates, I guess, that you're supposed to be dodging, they look like a giant green blur. And so I didn't really... It was kind of weird because, like, on one end the game wants you to dodge it. You know, they're like, oh, fall down and dodge all these lasers, which normally I would be okay with, but I just felt with the way that they went ahead and layered them up and stuff, like those first two layers I think are done badly. The rest are done great, but those first two layers not so much.
Feel the burn, kid?
Oh geez, all these bots. I always thought that was kind of funny as well, like when I was going and doing my playthroughs of this. You know, I thought it was kind of funny how the robots are actually, for lack of a better term, they're weak towards the flamethrower. And it's like, they're robots, why would that really matter? I can understand if they were like flesh-based organisms or something, but a robot that is insufferably weak towards flames and stuff, that just seems really silly to me. So this is pretty much where platforming starts to go to hell and stuff. I'm already at a really huge disadvantage because apparently there is a shadow underneath my character, and normally with most platforming, to figure out where you're going to land, you would pretty much gauge where your character's shadow is at, and then you'd be like, oh, okay, I can land here. But with me, I can't see it. It was somebody else that pointed it out to me. And so I'm sitting here and I'm trying to do these platforming segments, and my depth perception is just complete and utter dog shit. So the platforming towards the end of the game is really, really rough. Like I didn't really care for it, you know, and there's one segment where they have you platforming, like doing a ton of platforming over a bunch of lava and stuff, and it is some of the worst shit that I think I've ever seen in my life. This is one of those games where I would actually be really, really on board with it if it had like a remaster where they fixed the frame rate and like a bunch of other things. This is, for all intents and purposes, this is a cool game. I do like it. But I think that it actually had the misery of coming out at the wrong time. Then we got some weird bugs here. As you can see, it's not following the lift all the way up. The camera just shifts down to the bottom before it snaps free. And as we can see, some more robots that are just ridiculously weak to flame.
I'll see you in hell.
But no, the way that the game handles things is very, very odd, and especially with like a lot of the traps and a lot of the platforming and stuff. As soon as they put an extra life there, I kind of knew that I was going to get screwed on this upcoming segment. So I was going to run along this hallway, then I saw this floor, and I was like, oh no. Like I got a good 5 seconds of trying to tell what the hell I was looking at, and I said, this is going to wind up killing me. And so the first run, I must have died in that one specific spot, probably in between 25 to 30 times. The only reason I was able to keep going is because they stuck an extra life right there at the beginning. So that extra life, it must have been a late development thing. Like, somebody over at the development house must have looked at that and said, you know, this is going to be really hellish for people. You know, let's just go ahead and stick a free life here. That way they can keep doing it until they get it right, essentially. So and then we have more traps here as like the level goes on, and like this is what I mean when I say like aggressive. One of the more aggressive sections of platforming and stuff. They want you to fight off all these enemies and dodge traps and, you know, jump over these laser wires here, and it's kind of weird, you know, like it's a lot for my vision to try to keep up with, and so I found that after I was done with this segment, my eye was literally physically tired. And so it's kind of interesting because with slower games it's not so bad, but with games that have a large amount of intensity to them, I kind of sit back and I look at it, and it's like, oh god, I'm really struggling with this, blah 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 blah, and it was just tough. It's not the worst I've seen, but it definitely was like one of those things where, you know, you're just kind of like, oh god. And then that free life was also kind of placed there. This next section is just complete and utter bullshit. I mean, there's just so much crap shooting at you, and then you have so many platforms to jump around on, and this is another segment where I just died compulsively, you know. If it wasn't for the fact that there's a free life there, I would have never practiced this area enough to actually go and be able to make it through. I think it's actually kind of nice that they stuck a free life there because it encourages, at least I feel, it encourages repetition. You know, like it encourages going and doing it over again until you get it right, which I can appreciate, I think. Strangely enough, with all of these lines that your character can actually monkey bar across, I always felt that it was never an issue. Like, out of all the things that this game kind of tossed at me, I never had an issue with these lines, like, ever at all. I had an issue with platforms, I had an issue with falling through the map, I had an issue with enemies shooting me off screen and killing me instantly, but I never had an issue with any of these lines. So it's just one of those things that was really nice, I think. The only thing that I think that they could have done better is maybe widened the grab point a little bit. You know, because sometimes I would go to grab the line, and I understand that the line is thin, you know, it's not beyond me by any means, but the thing is sometimes I'd go to grab and it wouldn't always grab. And so, like, it's a little tough. Getting off the lines really isn't, it isn't difficult or anything, you just tap jump to do it. And yeah, we're still in the middle of going through platforming hell, and they got all these goddamn enemies coming at me. You know, like they're trying to encourage smart bomb use because there's so many smart bomb pickups just in this one area alone. I mean, it's nice and stuff, but I feel that this section, instead of smart bombing my way through it, I think it would have just been a lot better if they would have worked on the aim assist for your character's gun, because it would have been really fun just shooting enemies while on the platform instead of trying to get to the center of the room and, you know, mashing R2. So I think that was like one of the things that really just kind of hit the hardest, and it wasn't so much the crashing, it wasn't even so much the frame rate. Like, if I've played games with really bad frame rates before, the big thing that really I was kind of hoping would get better was the shooting and stuff. You know, like, I can easily see this game being a super solid shooter, but the thing is like, with how they mapped the right thumbstick, you know, you miss a lot of your shots, and it just doesn't really feel good. You know, especially when you know you're, like, right up on the enemy and stuff, and I know that I'm going to wind up going back and playing this game some more because it's just that much fun, but I just wish that certain things would have been done better. this area was actually a heap of fun. I enjoyed going on the rides of the various cubes and stuff, going and dodging and collecting items and killing enemies, and
Strap one on. It's time
it
to
was a lot of
jam.
fun, I think.
Strap one
I
on.
like how thoughtful they are with a lot of
Strap
the
one on.
pickups
It's time to jam.
as well, looking at like a lot of these pickups and stuff. Right after you would hit a checkpoint, a lot of the time they would try to have either health or they would try to have like
Keep your eyes on the
a
sky.
weapon for
Coming
you to
in airborne.
use, and like I can tell that they wanted, like with this game, they wanted the player to have as much fun as possible, and I think that they succeed to a certain lesser extent. I think the biggest issue that I have is like mainly how the thumbsticks are used and stuff, and like the thumbsticks aren't completely worthless. It's just it felt like they were just mapping buttons to them instead of actually trying to go and calibrate them correctly and stuff. I think that this game would have been a lot more solid if they would have just taken their time with it, but the weird thing about this game is it kind of feels like a large portion of it is rushed as well, especially with all the bugs and glitches, and you can tell that this game didn't really spend a lot of time in QA. It definitely kind of has that rushed feeling. Like, it has a good presentation to it, it's just a lot of the functionality is pretty hit and miss for the most part. I think the way that the game handles saves as well is really nice, because a lot of games back then, if you're saving your game, it was a very it was a sort of a long and unforgiving process, because you'd be like, okay,
Run, but you can't hide.
I want to save the game. So they'd be like, okay, well, do you want to save the game? You would have to tap yes. Then you would have to wait for it to bring the files on the memory card up, and then you would have to tap A to replace, and then A to confirm. Well, not A, but X to confirm. And then you would have to literally go and wait for it to save, and then it would say, oh, your save is done, and then you would have to back out of the save menu, click continue, and this game, it's like, do you want to save? Click yes, saves your game, you're in, you're out, you're on to the next level. Like, the way they handled it was really nice. Definitely didn't see a lot of it back then. So I like this boss a lot. I got my ass kicked by him a fair bit, primarily because I didn't know I was supposed to be using the green barrels on the side, but apparently this is supposed to be war. And he actually looks pretty harmless for the first stage of the fight. I mean, granted, this little beam that he has here will actually do a lot of damage to you if you sit still, so you gotta kind of bob and weave and everything else, but I think that the fight is at its best when he gets super huge like this, and then he starts chasing you around. He's got like a machete, well, I'm pretty sure it's a machete. It's either a machete or a really short sword in his hand, and he starts chasing you, and you can kind of cheese him a little bit, because you're supposed to be using the barrels on the side to actually go and you're supposed to blow them up and knock them down and give damage. But I found with the aiming being so goddamn bad on the thumbsticks, what I had to resort to was literally using smart bombs every time I was close to the gas barrels. And so I would just go and pop a smart bomb, watch him fall on his face, and there's actually, this fight apparently is supposed to go on for another 5 minutes. But if you go and you just hit him with barrels consistently, it ends right here. Like, there's a whole segment past this that I actually wound up going and doing. And what it is it's basically he goes and he collapses a huge portion of the map, and you gotta dodge a bunch of lava, and but I wound up killing him so fast on this run that I literally had to never see the second half of the fight. And so it's just kind of a hell of a thing. You know, granted, I'm glad that the fight ended rather early, because I don't want to have somebody that big chasing me.
You up for a tour of the White House?
So this was the level that I was referencing earlier when I said that they wanted me to do a particular amount of side-scrolling, but I was getting stuck on the geometry. when the level first starts, it's super strong and stuff. You're going and you're taking down turrets and killing enemies and stuff, and they have a lot of the levels segmented. So it's like you go, you mop out the entire area, and then you take down the gate. So like they make sure that they make sure to have the player clean the area out before they even try to go and take the gate down, because the gate has a fair amount of health and stuff. And then they stick like these little tiny landmine things in front of it. At least I'm pretty sure they're landmines. All I know is when I get too close, they explode. So, but they make sure that the player goes and cleans the area out and stuff, and it's just really, really fun. I actually enjoyed the beginning areas quite a bit, and it was a lot of fun bouncing around with like the grenade launcher and stuff, and going and bouncing and shooting and bouncing and shooting. And I kind of like that bouncy gameplay. It reminds me of Unreal Tournament a fair bit, where you're just like bouncing and shooting all the time, and the hypermobility is actually really, really nice.
I'll see you in hell.
I thought it was actually kind of funny how much health they give me as well, because a lot of the time you don't really need it. Like the game's kind of strange in some regards, because you're like, oh, okay, well, I just went through this entire area, I barely have a scratch, why is it giving me a 50% health pickup? You know, even on the regular difficulty and stuff, when I was going and running it, trying to prep, I didn't even really find myself using a lot of these health pickups. So, this particular section of the White House, I had to practice very heavily. It was the only section that I wound up using save states for. So what I would wind up doing is I would create a save state right in front of the White House, and I would practice this section until I got it right. And so for some reason my character didn't grab the ledge there. Instead I just fell straight into the lava and died. Kind of weird, but whatever. You know, I was actually really sweating this section of the game, because I was like, oh man, I'm gonna get stuck here, and then I'm gonna wind up, it's gonna be like the run of Resident Evil 3, where I wound up having to trim a little bit out because it's just a hell of a lot longer than what it should be. So the main thing that I was kind of struggling with is, you can see all these little pillars that are kind of poking out of the wall and stuff. It's like they want me to do like this run and gun kind of platforming segment, but there's all these pillars literally to get stuck on. I feel that they could have literally put pillars in, but they could have made it to where either the ledge was bigger, so you can just run along it better, or they could have recessed them into the wall a little bit to try to give the player a little bit more room to move around. Because it's weird, because they want you to do kind of like this hardcore platforming segment, but they want you to kill tons of enemies on top of it. And when I was learning how to do this area, the big issue that I would have is I would get stuck on the wall, and then enemies would shoot the hell out of me, so by the time I actually made it anywhere, enemies would wind up finishing me off, because I would literally go and have no health left. And so I went ahead and clipped straight through the ledging on this one. I was kind of frustrated with it a little bit, but I was like, okay, I've already come this far. I would like to actually see this through. And so I did. You know, I just kind of kept running and stuff, and I was like, you know, I'm going to have to literally use the D-pad for all of this. And then right here with these two open windows, I literally thought that that's how I was supposed to progress in the level. I was like supposed to like literally jump in and get inside the White House. But I was wrong, you know, and so basically what winds up happening is you have to literally keep snaking around these ledges to actually get up to the higher portions of the White House. Then here you jump up, you get up over the ledge, they give you some health, and then it's a bunch of light gunplay until you get around to the other end of the White House. And it's kind of weird how they put that border there when you first get up on the top and stuff, because you're supposed to snake all the way around, like literally, and then you're supposed to destroy this segment here, so they went ahead and put like that little wall there to keep you from just turning around, destroying it, and jumping in the hole. So this was pretty much the home stretch for me. Out of the entire game, I pretty much spent the most time on this level because there's just so much to it, I think, that you have to dodge. So I'm not sure what the hell these are supposed to be. I can't really quite tell what they are. My girlfriend says they're like little tiny Secret Service agents shooting missiles? I don't know. All I know is they hurt like hell. So I always try to grab the missile power up for this segment so I could just try to destroy this copter as fast as I can. And then from there you jump into the hole and like you go down and it's more Secret Service agents, and then it's some rough platforming as well. So as you get towards the end of this hall here, you're gonna have like a few agents to kill, and then I found that the platforming segment right here was just kind of ridiculous. I died so much just doing these jumps because for some weird reason my depth perception just wasn't having it. And then the camera for this area is actually kind of bad, so I wasn't aware that I was like supposed to go run and jump off that ledge back there. So I go and I run forward and I pick up the pulse laser power up, and then I go and I snake back around again. And it's like, man, I'm gonna have to actually jump this, but the game does a very poor job of conveying the fact that you're supposed to jump off that ledge because they don't pan out like enough for you to see, you know, to go and look at it and say, oh, okay, there's a ledge here, I should be able to jump on that. So it's just kind of weird and stuff, but after some practice, you know, it's easier to get through. And then we're at the ass end of the level here, and there's a couple secret agent dudes, and you just run to the end.
Let me guess. You were taking the tour with the Sunday.
You know, not gonna lie, the first time that I saw that it was the president, I was actually really hoping there was gonna be Nixon or Reagan. That would have just been funny as hell, I think.
I think we found our beast.
No, I spent, out of the entire game, I spent the most time on this boss. So, out of the 3 hours I spent playing the rest of the game, I have 4 just practicing this dude with save states. The main issue that I had with this boss is, before I figured out how to fight him and stuff, the big thing that was actually killing me was the frame rate. So when you first start with this boss and stuff, he's in a simple room, and then like he drops it down, and so the main thing that this boss fight kind of suffers from is too much crap going on the screen. Flame effects on the PlayStation have a tendency to gobble up its processing power a hell of a lot. So what would wind up happening is there would be so much stuff going on the screen between like things blowing up and flame effects and, you know, the effects for the weapon pickups and everything else, you know, that this boss fight would actually go and it would chug down to about, oh man, 5, maybe 10 frames. And so what was killing me when I was going and doing my initial runs for this boss is that I was dying to the frame rate. So I was literally getting killed by the frame rate because he would jump, it would send a shockwave out from under him, which I can barely see. I can't quite tell if it's gray or blue. And so I would have to jump over this shockwave or else I would take damage. And then if I took too much, naturally I would be dead. So the thing with this boss fight is that he doesn't have just a single health bar, he's got a ton of them. And you literally have to go and keep fighting him until all those health bars are gone. If you get too close, he melees you and it does a ton of damage. If you get too far, these platforms I'm standing on, they eventually sink into the lava. If I try to jump from platform to platform, sometimes my character doesn't make it. I mean, it's really kind of weird how they handled this boss, because on one end, with the way that the camera is set up, you know, like the camera naturally is going to be fixated on the boss so you can tell where he's at all times. But the issue with this is that you're going to have to jump to other platforms as well to pick up health and smart bombs and just everything that you need. So it creates kind of a miserable experience a fair bit, because on one end I want to break the lock on from the boss so I can actually go and run and grab stuff and be able to adequately see where my character's going to land and stuff, but I can't do it because the camera's locked onto the boss all the time. So when I would go and jump from platform to platform, a lot of this crap was literally just blind faith. And so I gotten used to it, and I found that with this boss I would have to fight him in a very aggressive manner in order to actually defeat him and stuff. The previous time I defeated him, he left me, I think, with it was like 5% health or some crap. Like, he'd almost killed me. So I feel that I got really lucky with this particular run, because I thought that this run was literally going to be me getting stuck on this particular boss and giving you guys like 40 or 50 minutes of me just getting my ass caned by this dude. But I got lucky, and I wound up defeating him in a timely manner and stuff, and it was actually really nice. And so I have this ending cutscene here, and I really enjoyed the game. It's one of the few games where, despite its flaws and everything else, I actually had a really good time with it. It's one of the few games where I can literally have a ton of flaws and still want to go back and play it again and stuff, and it's just a heap of fun. And I'm glad that it was sent out to me. I was pretty happy about that. So this is the credits. This is going to mark the end of the commentary and stuff. For those that stuck around, thank you so much. I hope you enjoyed yourself. I'll see y'all later.